Aloha, I'm Jim Hagerman, and this is my lab. Today's episode we're going to talk about the history and evolution of the Bugle Phonostage. Now, to understand how it came about, we got to step back in time and cover what kind of happened before that, where I was getting really into vacuum tubes, right? I spent the entire 1990s studying vacuum tube circuits, reading every magazine I could, Vacuum Tube Valley, Sound Practices, Glass Audio. I was going through every Tektronix oscilloscope schematic I could find, just digging out all the different details and tricks of how to use vacuum tubes. That led to the design and production of this, the vacuum trace, a vacuum tube curve tracer. I still use mine today. After the vacuum trace entered production, I put all my time and effort into designing what would become one of the world's greatest phonostages, the trumpet. It was originally called H's, as the suspension bridge design had towers shaped like the letter H, and which also ties in with my last name. The first prototype employed 6 tubes and volume polarity controls. It wasn't quite perfect, as I was running the 12 AX7 tubes with too much current, but I knew I was onto something. Further listening tests revealed constant current operation of the cathode followers presented better dynamics, which is why 2 more tubes were added to the design. The subsequent prototype was stunning, and I was one step closer to production. However, I realized at that time just how easy it would be to offer up a single-ended version of the circuit, and that became the cornet. Obviously, the next logical step was to create a budget model employing op-amps, and that's how the Bugle became reality. After much research, previously mentioned, I selected a passive split equalization multiple gain stage architecture for its lack of negative feedback and subsequent relaxing and neutral sonic presentation. There are many other ways to implement the phonostage, but I chose this one. All 3 products, trumpet, cornet, and bugle, use this same topology. Each equalization section is based on a simple RC filter, providing both pole and zero. After input loading, 47K, the first op-amp provides enough gain to get the signal out of the mud. This is where the noise floor of the phonostage is created, so a low noise op-amp is imperative. The 50 and 500 Hz equalization corners were selected to go first. The reason for this is to cut treble as much as possible before hitting the second gain stage, thereby improving overload capability. The second equalization network implements a 2.122 kHz and 50 kHz corners. At this point, the signal is completely equalized. An AC coupling capacitor is added here to eliminate DC caused by voltage offset error in the first op-amp and amplified by a ton of DC gain. Placing this capacitor internally keeps external loading off of it, such as cable capacitance or a difficult to drive line stage impedance, so it behaves nicely without introducing smear. The final series resistor does sort of the same thing, maintaining stability of the op-amp under all conditions, including a short circuit. The last thing you want is a capacitor sitting right on the output of an op-amp. For the equalization filters, I made an online calculator where I could try out various combinations of resistors and capacitors, which was very handy. I even came up with an NAB equalization for tape decks. This calculator is still in use today. A bit about op-amps in the Bugle. The original version used OPA 2134 in all 3 spots, a very nice sounding JFET input amplifier. Why did I choose JFET type? Well, simply because I did not want any input bias current to be going through the coils of the cartridge. When using moving magnet cartridges, a 1 nanoamp input bias current translates to about 1% of full signal. Too much, I think. Version 1 of the Bugle was a bare bones model operating off a pair of 9-volt batteries and no chassis. This was great for do-it-yourselfers but not particularly practical as a home audio product, so I created a matching linear power supply. Yay! And then I designed the Bugle Pro, a variable equalization model with an enclosure using both Bugle 1 and the new power supply. It was a little crazy to build as many of the components were mounted off board, but it worked great. The equalization calculator proved its worth, and I sold 100 of these, many in kit form. Eventually, the day finally came, in 2013, that I realized the Bugle 2 needed to be born. Op amps were upgraded to lower noise LM4562 type, components improved, inductive filters added to supply rails, and the ability to handle moving coil to cartridges was added. More importantly, it came with a nice enclosure and external power supply. Everything you needed. This is what the Bugle was meant to be. Low cost, compact, high performance, plug and play. At the time, Kickstarter was a new and popular way to launch new products, so that's what I did. It was very successful. Many people purchased the kit version, and you will hear all about these on audio forums, where op amps, capacitors, or the power supply has been upgraded. I've always used sockets for the op amps with exactly this in mind. For a very short time, I offered an upgraded Bugle 2 Elite model in an extruded aluminum case, gold-plated RCA jacks, and expensive capacitor upgrades. By 2017, the marketplace for quality, budget Phonostages were getting very competitive. In response, Bugle 3 was introduced having internal dip switches for both loading and gain, a popular feature at the time. Same enclosure and power supply. Bugle 2 and Bugle 3 have done very well for me, selling in the thousands. These two products have earned their place in history. And now, for 2023, it's time for yet another set of upgrades. The Bugle 4, which I call the Bugle MC, MC for moving coil, has been upgraded with an aluminum enclosure and controls for both loading and gain moved to the front panel. How convenient! I've also improved the input radio frequency filters to help reduce noise caused by nearby Wi-Fi antenna. Same great sound, bandwidth, and equalization. And this is the Bugle MC. You can buy today. Thanks for watching. And until next time, mahalo.